you done me in your bed, I felt it. I tried to be chill, but you're so hot that I melted. It fell right through the cracks, and I'm trying to get back. Before the cool done run out, I'll be giving it my bestest, and nothing's gonna stop me but divine intervention, and beckoning to get my turn to win some or learn some. But I won't hesitate no more, no more. It is our fate, I'm yours. Hey. Well, open up your mind and see like me. Open up your plans and damn you're free. Look into your heart and you'll find love, 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 love. Listen to the music of the moment, people dance and sing. We're just one big family in this our God-forsaken right to be loved, love, 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 loved. Well, I won't hesitate no more, no more. This is our fate, I'm sure there's no need to complicate. Our time, it is short, it is our fate, I'm yours. Well, too much time tongue in the mirror and bending over backwards just to try to see it clearer, but my breath fogged up the glass, and I'm trying to get back. So what I'm saying is there ain't no better reason to rid yourself of vanity and just go with the seasons. It's what we aim to do. Our name is our virtue, but I won't hesitate no more, no more. This is our thing, I'm sure there's no need to complicate. Our time is short, this is our fate, I'm yours. Morning. Y'all might know this next one. I encourage you to sing along. Desmond has his barrel in the marketplace, and Molly is the singer in a band. Desmond says to Molly, girl, I like your face, and Molly says this as she takes him by the hand. Come on! Oh, bloody, oh, blada, life goes on, right? La, 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 life goes on. Yes, it does. Oh, bloody, oh, blada, life goes on, right? La, 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 life goes on. Desmond takes the trolley to the jewelry store, buys a 20-karat golden ring, takes it back to Molly waiting at the store, and he gives it to her, she begins to sing. Oh, bloody, oh, blada, life goes on, la, 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 life goes on. Oh, bloody, oh, blada, life goes on, la, 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 life goes on. Come on. In a couple of years they have built a home, sweet home, with a couple of kids running in the yard of Desmond and Molly Jones. happy ever after in the marketplace. Desmond lets the children lend a hand. Molly stays at home and does a pretty face, and in the evening she's still singing with the band. Say, oh bloody, oh bloody, life goes on, right? La 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 la, life goes on, it goes on. Oh bloody, life goes on, right? La 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 la, life goes on. Come on, one more time. Oh bloody, life goes on, right? La 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 la, life goes on. Say, oh bloody, life goes on, right? La 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 la, life goes on.
Want to invite to the Bema Dr. Reverend Keith Cox.
Good morning, everyone, and happy St. Paddy's Day, and a huge welcome. We have as our musicians today, James Harper on guitar. Woo! We're happy to have back in the house Yaron Spiewak from a month away, traveling the world. And a new drummer we have with us today, Gianluca Palmieri.
Yeah.
How is everybody today? Good, happy to hear it. We are a metaphysical-based, before we go any further, I just have to stop and say something dear to my heart. I'm so very happy to have back here with us our assistant minister, the one and only Reverend Edward Brown is back. He will be taking dance requests in the back of the room later. So we are known as the Center for Spiritual Living Los Angeles. If you're here for the first time, we welcome. We're happy to have you here. We are a metaphysical-based New Thought community that comes together every Sunday morning to honor the divine that exists within you and within me equally, that's spread out among all sentient beings that we both experience and express through the thoughts, our beliefs, our actions, our reactions, and our interactions with life itself. Primarily, we practice here the teachings of Dr. Ernest Holmes through the study of what's known as religious science or the science of mind. This particular philosophy, this faith, this way of life, Dr. Holmes says, is a synthesis of the laws of science, the opinions of philosophy, and the revelations of religion applied to human needs and the aspirations of humankind. In class this week, we talked about how Dr. Ernest Holmes was a mystic who found the divine or God or source or the thing itself in the silence. And so I invite you right now to think about what it's like to go within the silence and connect with this power that exists within all of us. And to also do the same for all beings as they both walk this planet or as they may be leaving this planet and transcend to the next experience of life. As I said, we come together every Sunday morning to honor that power within each one of us, to honor the time that we share together here in community, meaning coming together to experience the divine that exists within all of us. And we're happy to have you here, whether you're live in person or you're joining us through Facebook Live. Sarah's got the camera there. Or if you're live streaming us from afar, either live or later. As Dr. Walker used to say, we welcome one and welcome all. And so we open our service every Sunday morning with a ritual called Calling in the Light. Our practitioner of the day carries us through that. I am it at the moment, so I'm your practitioner. Happy to have one of our fantastic students who's getting this teaching in such a wonderful, magnificent way be our illuminator. I'd like to welcome to the Bema, Nancy Rooney. And so this ritual is called Calling in the Light. It's an opportunity for each of us to acknowledge that light, that power within all of us, and to listen in a new way to the words of this ritual, even though most of you have heard them before. And I invite you to open your mind and your heart this morning to hear the religions, the faiths of the world that are being acknowledged in this ritual today in a new way. It seems to be somewhat the norm in today's world that in houses of worship, people don't always feel safe. And that has been exemplified once again by the shootings, the terrorist attack that took place in New Zealand. And so please hold in your mind not only the light that exists within you, but for each of those individuals that lost their life, their physical life, during that tragic event, but also the ripple effect of those in their family as well as anyone, meaning all of us really, who've been affected by such tragedy and such violence and events that are quite difficult to understand. Calling in the light. The purpose of this ritual is to draw into our gathering this morning a conscious awareness of our oneness and the qualities that we possess as complete expressions of the divine. Today, we perform this ceremony to promote the universal consciousness of life, which acknowledges that all peoples and all faiths, all sentient beings, come from the one great universal presence. It's what we call spirit. And fundamental to this truth is the unifying nature of all religious thought and experience, which we honor here today. And so as Nancy lights the first candle, she does so for the spiritual practice called the Tao, honoring the universal path of harmony and equilibrium. It's also known as the natural way. And we move to the second candle, and if for some reason it doesn't light, use your imagination. It's a metaphor anyway for the light within. The second candle that we light is for the shamanic traditions, honoring the beliefs and practices of all indigenous peoples, the way of primal spirituality. As we move to the third candle, Nancy lights it for Hinduism, honoring the path of knowledge, action, and devotion. As we move to the fourth candle, it's lit for Judaism. It's that which is practiced in this room the majority of the time during the week. And we light this candle for Judaism, honoring the ethical path of living by sacred law. And as we move to the next candle, the fifth candle, Nancy illuminates this candle for all forms of Buddhism, honoring the Four Noble Truths and the path of compassion. And as we move to the sixth candle, we light it for all forms of Christianity, honoring the Christ consciousness, which is also known as the path of love. Moving to the next candle, Nancy lights the seventh candle for all forms of Islam, honoring the path of submission to the will of God as the highest calling. Moving to the eighth candle, we light it for the universalistic religion of Baha'i, honoring the path of unity and of peace. Moving to the ninth candle, we illuminate it for all forms of new thought. It's what we practice here at the Center for Spiritual Living, Los Angeles. And we illuminate this candle for new thought, honoring the metaphysical path of mental healing through the practices of universal spiritual principles. And moving to the 10th and final candle, it's known as the healing candle. I invite you to take a moment to think of anyone in your life, any sentient being, a pet, a loved one, a human, as well as anyone that is affected and everyone that is affected by this tragic event, including the man that is known as deranged, as the shooter. And let's put him as well into the light of the healing flame, so that each and every individual will experience the eternal and everlasting love of the divine.
Please join us. Calling in the light. Calling
calling in the light, calling in the light of love, calling in the light, calling in the light, calling in the light of love.
Please repeat after me. I am love.
I am love.
I am peace.
I am peace.
In my heart,
In my heart,
I am free.
I am free.
I am spirit.
I am spirit.
I am soul.
I am soul.
All together,
All together,
we are whole.
we are whole.
Let's hear it, come on.
Calling in the light, calling in the light, calling in the light of love.
Calling in the light, calling in the light, calling in the light of love. Calling in the light of love. And so it is, and so it is, and so it is.
So, sitting in the presence of silence, I speak my word for each and every one of us, individually and collectively, knowing that we are here this morning by divine appointment. That the ritual that we just experienced and expressed and partook in is a revelation of the interconnectedness, of the continuity, of the wholeness that exists by means of all of life. And so the light of the divine is present in and as all. And so we each consciously make a covenant with ourselves to let this moment be the moment that we open ourselves to a greater realization and awareness of that power that exists within and as all, regardless of the choices they make in life. And it's from this place of honoring the divine that we grow and reveal our divinity in a new, brighter, broader, more expansive, purposeful way. We let this time together be an example of what that feels and looks like. And for that we say thank you, and let it be as we say together, amen. And so it is. Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. Thank you. So our first song by James is titled "And So It Goes," correct? Which is very similar to the same way that we leave, if you will, release our prayers often here, which is "and so it is." So I invite you to hear "and so it goes" in the same vein. James Harper, ladies and gentlemen.
In every heart there is a room, a sanctuary safe and strong, to heal the wounds from lovers past, until a new one comes along. I spoke to you in cautious tones. You answered me with no pretense, and still I feel I've said too much. My silence is my self-defense. Every time I've held a rose, it seems I've only felt the thorns. And so it goes, and so it goes, and so will you soon, I suppose. But if my silence made you leave, then that would be my worst mistake. So I will choose to share this room with you, and you can have this heart to break. And this is why my eyes are closed. It's just as well for all I've seen. And so it goes, and so it goes, and you're the only one who knows. So I would choose to be with you, as if the choice were mine to make. And you can make decisions too, and you can have this heart to break. And so it goes, and so it goes, and you're the only one who knows.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Thank you. You're going to want this. I know how important that is right now. Thank you. Beautiful. So, if you're a friend that is the Bring a Friend to Sunday here today, thank you. Raise your hands if you're the Bring a Friend. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate that, having them get you up early on a Sunday morning, even though it's really not early, right? If we met at 8 a.m., it would be early. So we're continuing on our journey of living and practicing the season for nonviolence here at the Center for Spiritual Living Los Angeles. It's the period between January 30th and April 4th that is the bookmark ends, if you will, of the birthday of Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King, and Mahatma Gandhi. And the quote that I keep looking at in context of not only where we're at on this journey of finding our personal self-empowerment through a spiritual awakening, which is the vision statement for our center here, but engaging in the practice of living in forgiveness, living in an act of nonviolence in life, especially when we're confronted with acts of violence that we see in the world today, is this of Dr. Martin Luther King, which is one dream can change everything. One dream can change everything. The theme for this week is forgiveness. You have bookmarks in your seat, and if not, there's some to pass forward for those of you that are in the front, and they didn't have enough to put in the front. So someone can you guys pass 4 of those forward, please? So I want to start with a quote. I'm going to start and end with this quote today by Robert Holden, and see if it speaks to you. Today is a good day for forgiveness. Mind you, forgiveness is not for everyone. It's only for those who would like to experience peace, love, joy, bliss, healing, freedom, total salvation, and things like that. Anybody in the room want to experience one or more of those? I would think we all would, whether you raised your hand or not. Forgiveness is a concept that is part of the evolutionary process of stepping into your spiritual power in life. As we practice the season for nonviolence, I'm going to just recap for you quickly what the concept of nonviolence is. Nonviolence is the personal practice of being harmless to the self and others under every condition. It comes from the belief that hurting people, animals, or the environment is unnecessary to achieve an outcome, and refers to a general philosophy of abstention from violence. This may be based on religious, moral, or spiritual principles, or it may be purely strategic for pragmatic reasons. The truth is, for us to step into a life that has greater peace, love, joy, bliss, healing, freedom, total salvation, or things like that, will require of us to live as consciously as possible in a non-violent manner. For us here at the Center for Spiritual Living Los Angeles, and many of the different centers and or spiritual homes that are practicing the season for nonviolence, I know that the reason they're doing it isn't necessarily for religious and or for moral reasons. We're not here to be the morality police or to be practicing religion in the traditional sense. However, we are an environment here and claim to be an environment and practice being an environment that's here to support you, the individual, in finding your spiritual nature and using it in a way to benefit not only yourself, but all of life itself. Well, the spiritual principles that we practice here at this teaching and other centers around the world here are ones of oneness, of cause and effect, and of the interconnectedness of all humanity. Oneness, meaning that there's only one thing ever taking place. This is a foundational cornerstone to the philosophy that Dr. Holmes wrote about in The Science of Mind, and any other philosophy that's considered a new thought teaching, which this is that there's only one thing ever taking place. Life would be what it could be called. One is, it could be God. If you don't like that word, don't use it. Use another one. It doesn't change the power that we're talking about, our source. And that we live in a universe that is one of cause and effect, that's governed by spiritual principles, spiritual law. In our case, as sentient, awake human beings, we experience life relative to what's going on in our state of mind. And the third component to that, the triad, if you will, the trinity of these beliefs, is that we are all interconnected. We are all interconnected by means of our mind by which we individualize, understanding that there's really only one mind, period. Now, that within itself is a lot to take in. Would you not agree? But let's use that as the basis, the foundation in how we approach our healing in life in regards to choosing to live a life that is non-violent. The term nonviolence is often linked with or used as a synonym for peace. And despite being frequently equated with passivity and pacifism, this is rejected by nonviolent advocates and activists. Nonviolence refers specifically to the absence of violence in our life. Now, I don't completely agree with that in the traditional sense that we don't want peace in our life. But peace oftentimes is believed to be that we sit on our tuchus with our legs crossed, with our hands put like this on it, and we just simply om, and that we just hope for peace. But I want us to look at peace in a different way, and I've spoken of this in the last few weeks. I'm going to continue to speak of it as we look at this concept of living nonviolently, with the objective being peace, but peace not from the om perspective, but peace as the acronym of Purposeful Energy Activates Conscious Evolution, PEACE. Purposeful Energy Activates Conscious Evolution. Now, I can't speak for you, but I think I know for you because we're all connected in that one mind that we're talking about. When there's attacks such as what took place in New Zealand this week and the ripple effect of that, before you add to what's going on in the political system in our country, that's certainly what is being called forth from within each and every one of us that know that we know that we know that the way that we think and act and believe and interact with the power of mind itself has an effect. Then it's then incumbent upon us to consciously use our energy in a purposeful way to activate conscious evolution. In other words, conscious evolution means that we begin to vibrate at a higher frequency that rises up and that meets our divine nature, meaning that we live from a place that's more in alignment with our divine nature, whose qualities are peace, power, beauty, joy, light, life, love, and wisdom. And if we're living in anything contrary to that, we're living from a place of letting our humanity dictate or be dominant to us as we engage in the everyday actions of life. Building up to this in the season for nonviolence, we've taken a look at living from a place of self-forgiveness. In other words, to forgive the self for whatever we've done or think that we've done to ourselves on this journey of finding our personal self-empowerment through a spiritual awakening that may have caused harm to others or ourselves, or anything that we may have done in life that has indeed been violent. And that, by the way, isn't something that's in the long time past. It could have been yesterday. It could have been this morning. It could have been 5 minutes ago when I started talking. Meaning you want me to shut up, but I'm not. All right, so moving from self-forgiveness, we then move to courage. To live this life of choosing to be nonviolent, to choose to live from a place of self-forgiveness, to choose to live from a place of peace, purposeful energy, activating conscious evolution, requires courage. Courage in the sense that the Latin origin of the word is living from the heart. In other words, allowing the love of the divine that exists within us to be an outward expression, not just something that we cross our legs, do our hands, and oh my God, got it? Which then moved us to the theme of reverence, meaning that we hold sacred this participation that we have in the journey of our finding our personal self-empowerment through a spiritual awakening, and we find sacred the experience and the expression of choosing to live from courage, and we find sacred the journey and the opportunity to live in a state of self-forgiveness, which then led us to the next week, which the theme was gratitude. Gratitude meaning that we understand that both it is one of the most transformative qualities that exist for us as human beings or sentient beings, because I certainly believe my beloved four-legged spiritual offspring Sadie has been grateful this week on our journey. But to know that that expression of gratitude shifts the trajectory of what's going on in our life. To be able to choose to find gratitude or blessings, if you will, even when what's showing up in the world seems to be contrary to anything that we would want to or could be grateful for. Which moved us then to the fifth week in this journey, which was living from patience. Meaning this journey of awakening ourselves and choosing to live anew, to be anew in life, requires patience, because sometimes the outer doesn't reflect the work that we think we're doing in the inner. Anybody ever had an experience in life where you've been doing all this good work and all of a sudden you're like, how the hell did that show up, right? Meaning it's an evolutionary process. Remember, it's a journey. Be patient with yourself as you become more and more awakened on your journey. Which then moved us to the next week, which was last week, which was to listen. To just simply get quiet and listen. Not just to what's going on out here, but to what's going on in here. Because what's going on within is of far greater importance than what's going on out here. Because what's going on in here is what is cause to what shows up out here. And so often when we look out here, I just spoke of being patient on the journey, we see what's going on out here, and it's not happening according to what we call a timeline, but since the power that is creative is timeless, then it doesn't know that you need to have your good at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon or someone's going to be PO'd. It doesn't know that. So what is required of us then is to listen to say, what am I telling myself when the outer looks different than I think it should? Am I telling myself I am peace, I am power, I am beauty, I am creative, I am one, I am life? Or do we let those other crazy voices start talking and let them then have dominion? Which then moves us to this week, which is living from a state of forgiveness. Henry David Thoreau tells us that it's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. Meaning that you are at choice as to what you see, not only in the external, but in the internal. Well, now forgiveness is one of those tricky things. Do you guys not agree with that? Because you think oftentimes what comes with that is absolution, but that's not necessarily the case. The definition for forgiveness is the action or process of forgiving, or being forgiven. Now, I often teach that forgiveness is not a one-time step. It's a step by step by step by step process. Now, we oftentimes think that that's a step forward and a step forward and a step forward. But sometimes it's 2 steps forward and 12 back. Anybody ever walk that path of forgiveness? So here are some synonyms for forgiveness and see if it speaks to you. Pardon, absolution, exoneration, remission, indulgence, understanding, mercy, clemency, lenience, quarter, reprieve, amnesty, or acquittal. Does anyone attach those words as a definition for forgiveness? Someone did. Okay, so it's okay. We have beings come in here that aren't in the room, so that was for them. It was Jose? Ayanita Jose. O'Day. Okay, so anyway, so if you attach yourself to any of those beliefs as to what forgiveness is, forgive yourself for it and stop it. It's okay, Dan. We all have them. We all have them, right? We all got them. So stop it and forgive yourself for attaching that which isn't serving you well in the concept of forgiveness in living your life. What I would like for you to look at it as a clearing is that to really step into forgiveness in life is to give a clearing or a cleaning out of what was. Now, remember last week I read this Rumi quote of us understanding where we're at on the journey of finding out who we are as a spiritual being. And I'm going to read it to us again for it to be the foundation from how we engage in forgiveness. The great 13th century poet Rumi writes, "Listen, O drop, give yourself up without regret. And exchange gain the ocean. Listen, O drop. Bestow upon yourself this honor. In the arms of the sea, be secure. Who indeed be so fortunate? An ocean wooing a drop? In God's name, sell and buy at once, give a drop, and take the sea full of pearls." What he's telling us there is that we are, as a drop, one with the ocean, and that the ocean is one with us. And that is a metaphor for the same with all expressions of life. But we don't get to experience that ocean wooing us as a drop, or the divine wooing us to come in to express more of that which we are, if we're hanging on to something that isn't serving us. In other words, something that is being called forth from within us that requires forgiveness. Forgiveness, David Small says, which is on the bookmark you've been given, is to understand somebody else as a human being. And oftentimes that isn't somebody else meaning another person, it's also yourself. He goes on to write, I think is about as close to real forgiveness as one can get. I'll read that again. To understand somebody else as a human being, I think, is about as close to real forgiveness as one gets. And I would think it would be important to not only understand them as a human being, but to see them as a divine being who's expressing their humanity. And as we express our humanity, we often have foibles. And that's what we'll call the act that requires forgiveness. In other words, expressing ourselves in a way that's less divine. Anybody ever done that? Anybody thought about doing it this morning? Maya Angelou tells us about forgiveness, that forgiveness, it's one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself, to forgive. Forgive everybody. You are relieved of carrying that burden of resentment. You really are lighter. You feel lighter. You just drop that. In other words, you drop that which you've been hanging on to. She goes on to say, you can't forgive without loving. And I don't mean sentimentality. I don't mean mush. I mean having enough courage to stand up and say, I forgive. I'm finished with it. I'm finished with it. Meaning that I'm choosing to step into the healing around the very thing that is causing me to believe that I am separate from the good or the divine that exists. Marianne Williamson writes, the practice of forgiveness is our most important contribution to the healing of the world. To the healing of the world. That's a big statement. Would you agree with that? And yet, it's possible. And it can only be made manifest when we each choose to step into it. Now, it's also important for us to understand why healing is important and what healing is. Dr. Ernest Holmes in The Science of Mind says that mental healing means mind healing. To heal means to make whole. Healing is not creating a perfect idea or a perfect body, meaning not just the physical perfect body, but the body of affairs in life. It is a revealing of an idea which is already perfect, uppercase P. Disease, he says, is a fact, but not a truth. It's an experience, but not a spiritual reality. What both Marianne and Dr. Holmes is talking about is that if we desire to live a life that is non-violent by nature, and there is something within our consciousness that needs healing by means of forgiveness, what it's important for us to look at is the wholeness, the oneness, the perfection, the completeness that exists already as life, and it exists already as life in me and in you and in those that lost their life in New Zealand. And the truth is, it also exists equally in the gentleman who walked in with a gun. Now, that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, but the spiritual truth that we teach here at the Center for Spiritual Living and other metaphysical places or churches or whatever is that God is all there is. That is not a truth that is just true when things go the way you want them to. It either is true or it isn't true. There is zero room for gray. But it's a hard pill to swallow at times, right? And yet what we know from this teaching, from what Dr. Holmes is telling us, is that really all healing is mental healing, meaning that every single thing begins and ends in mind. Then should we desire to have a different outcome in life, meaning to be able to see the divine in those that show up looking very contrary to the divine, knowing that it's not about them at the end of the day, it's about us, because it's our own consciousness that is either evolving or not. And if we desire to have a consciousness that is evolving, in other words, using our energy purposefully so that we reveal conscious evolution, then we have to bring what seems to be darkness, or what we've labeled as darkness, into the light and let the light illuminate that which is an illusion, which is called darkness. Carl Jung says, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. By making it conscious. In other words, bringing it forth into our mind and holding it in front of us and going, okay, this which is darkness, fill in the blank, whatever you want to call it, whatever it's going to look like, this that is dark, what does this mean to me? Does it have power to me? Am I going to allow it to be disempowering in my life? Or am I going to choose to be powerful and empowered in my life and choose to see the divine that exists within it? That doesn't mean separate from its humanness. It means in addition to its humanness. It's being able to hold the truth about it as a divine being and know that the actions are human. One should be held accountable for their actions as a human, but whatever one chooses to do with their humanness does not separate their divinity from them, because if that were the case, then every single thing about this teaching would fall apart. The very essence about this philosophy and this teaching and this way of life is that there's truly only one thing ever taking place. It is mind. We call it God, but it's a mental action, and that we experience it, we express it, we are a result of our actions, our thoughts, our reactions, and our interactions in life, because we live in a world that is governed, a universe that is governed by spiritual law. Those laws exist. They are not a result of one's opinion of them. They just are. Just like gravity. They just are. And so we get to ask ourselves, are we willing to walk the pathway of life burdened with our opinions of what is right and what is wrong? Or do we choose to ask ourselves, as we did in our 8-week class of Building a Healing Consciousness from week 1, to ask ourselves, why am I here? Not just standing here in a white shirt and denim before you expressing my divinity. Why am I, a divine being whose name is Keith Cox, whose profession is being a minister, here walking this earth at this time on this Sunday morning, and what am I here to do? And what am I here to be? And do I want to grow? And if I do, why? And then the next question meaning all of you as well, get to ask ourselves is, what am I willing to release so that my divinity becomes the dominant dominion force in my life? Dr. Holmes tells us that in the eternal, which is not once we leave this earth that we're walking, the eternal is a now activity. It's that force within us. He says that in the eternal now, there can be no place for divine anger or unforgiveness or punishment. If we perceive the need for this forgiveness that's so critical to us on this journey of finding our personal self-empowerment through a spiritual awakening, it is a human condition. It's not a divine condition. It's a human condition. It's one that's necessary, but it's a human condition. He says human forgiveness is the process that frees us to live in the eternal now. In other words, living as that divine power that exists within us, and to remind you the qualities of that divine power are peace, power, beauty, joy, light, life, love, and wisdom. He says it's essential to step into this state of our eternality by forgiveness and our humanity if necessary. That's essential to us before real spiritual growth can flourish. Doesn't mean that it's required of us if we want to have snippets of it. But if we really desire to live this place where the divine is what we express in life, as opposed to expressing our humanity, hoping that we can return to our divinity, he's talking about living from our divinity, incorporating that with our humanity. That's the action of our spiritual growth flourishing. He says, then this teaching, the science of mind, teaches us that the ultimate goal of life is complete emancipation from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. Forgiveness is a critical piece here. Gandhi, who we are celebrating during this time of the season for nonviolence, tells us that if we practice an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, soon the whole world will be blind and toothless. not a world I want to walk in. How about you? I like my teeth. So I ask you today, what are some things that you'd like to forgive? Some things that popped up for me in preparing for this is, I want to forgive the trainers at the Santa Anita Park right now. Right? I don't understand why any of that went down. On the news, they talk about 22 horses died. They didn't die. They put them down because they were running them in the dirt. My humanity's showing up. But that's something I would like to step into forgiveness for. The shooter in New Zealand, our current political system, a past hurt with a loved one. These aren't just mine. I'm saying these are things that came up. I'm asking you, what in your life would you like to forgive today? Would you like to forgive yourself for the way that you did or didn't act, something you did or didn't say, for the belief that you may have that as you've moved along this chronological path in your life that you may have missed an opportunity? You want to forgive yourself for anything that has shown up or hasn't shown up in life. The great teacher, Jerry Jampolsky, who is the lead of a teaching called Attitudinal Healing, says that the result of forgiveness is the stopping of the recycling of anger within ourselves and in the world. Peace, purposeful energy, activating conscious evolution, will come to the world when each of us takes the responsibility of forgiving everyone, including ourselves, completely. 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 But that completeness can only happen when we start right now. And we live in that state of forgiveness until we're not living in it. And then we start anew. And we stay in that state of mind until we're not living in forgiveness. And we start anew. And the place to start is in that very moment when you feel guilt or angst or crappy because you weren't living in forgiveness. So I ask you in closing today, is today a good day for forgiveness? Mind you, it's not for everyone. It's only for those who would like to experience peace, love, joy, bliss, healing, freedom, total salvation, and stuff like that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I'd like to welcome back our three handsome musicians, Gianluca, James, and Yaron. No, you're fine. Stay. No, you're good. Stay. You're good.
Hey, 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's alright with me. Some things are just meant to be. It never comes easily, and when it does, I'm already gone. I'm practically never still, more likely to move until I end up alone, and well, my life continues inching along. Bernadette comes and I get lost on her time. She's much too sweet and she's always gonna be. And when I return to her arms and her eyes, it might not be the same, but it's alright with me. Okay, it's alright with me. Some people are scared to say what's happening frequently, but I would never shy from a fight. Have a heartbeat with a high demand. Often we'll go hand in hand, but I'm sick of just starting plans. I want to spend the rest of my life Bernadette comes and I get lost on her time. She's much too sweet and she's always gonna be. And when I return to her arms and her eyes, yeah, it might not be the same, but it's alright with me, yeah. Okay, it's alright with me. Some people are scared to say what's happening frequently. I wanna spend the rest of my life and when Bernadette comes, I get lost on her time. And she's much too sweet and she's always gonna be. When I return to her arms and her eyes, it might not be the same, but it's alright with me. Okay, it's alright with me. Some people are scared to say what's happening frequently. I wanna spend the rest of my life. Thank you so much.